one-way fighting.
Hello, you're through to One Way Fighting with me, Neill Smith, and we've got today's guest, Adam Lindop, with us today. Excited about this one. We brought Adam in specifically because he's got a Sambo background, or Sambo. If you don't know already, that's the background that you see with a lot of your big martial artists like Khabib Nurmagomedov, Fedor Emilianenko, Arlovski. If you're really into it, you've got people like Ron Tripp back in the early 90s. So yeah, Adam's from Liverpool area. It's been a while since I've seen you. Adam, how you doing?
Not too bad. It has been quite a long time, hasn't it?
Yeah, last time I seen you, you were choking me out in the gym.
No, I think I saw you after then, but I'm not. Yeah,
but
all blessed on one.
Few fights, but yeah, we'll talk about that later on, because the big reason why I wanted you on, for me, my chokes were so, and then after doing a little sort of, you come down to our gym, didn't you, and did the day just specialising on chokes, and they were tight after that, mate. Believe me, some people wouldn't thank you for it because I caught them with the chokes after that, like. So tell us a bit about yourself, Adam. Like, you know, your past, where you come from, your background.
Well, despite the fact that I live in Liverpool, I was actually born in Newcastle. Brief overview: born in Newcastle, moved to Newton Willows with my parents, joined the army, left the army, moved to Liverpool. Not a massive amount I can say other than that, to be perfectly honest. Started training in traditional jiu-jitsu at 13. Started training in Thai boxing and Brazilian jiu-jitsu, more no-gi than gi, a couple of years after I left the army. Was met or introduced to my first Sambo coach, who is George Casidas, a few years after that, and things skyrocketed from there, Sambo-wise.
Yeah. How did you find that, where you said you did the traditional jiu-jitsu and the Brazilian jiu-jitsu, but you did it mostly no-gi? When you're doing the Sambo, you've got the red and blue uniform, haven't you, with the wrestling pants, but it's like a short gi, isn't it, the what you wear on top? And what was it like going there? Because they do, I mean, predominantly Sambos, the background sort of from Russians training out in Japan, isn't it? So the part of it's like judo style with stand-up game, if I'm not wrong. You're the specialist. I mean, how did it go from then going to wearing a gi and people trying to hip toss you with a, you know, sort of clinching the gi there?
Well, a brief kind of overview of the history of Sambo is that its founder, Shemkov, was actually Jigoro Kano's, one of Jigoro Kano's first black belts. And when he came or went back to the Soviet Union, he was involved, along with many people. There's actually more than one founder of Sambo. It's a little bit more complicated than that, but I won't.
They amalgamated a couple of different people's self-defense, didn't they?
Yeah, I mean, it's arguably it is a Soviet unarmed combat system for the Russian military. And I say arguably because there's such a lot in it that is ultimately sport orientated, and that comes after, that comes later on. As for the uniforms, well, with Oshemkov being a judoka, the jacket is obviously a given. Nobody's quite sure why shorts rather than trousers, possibly just to differentiate it from judo. Nobody's entirely sure with that. There is people who will say that the jacket and the way that the belt on a Kirk or a Sambo jacket is actually interwoven through the jacket, so it's put through loops in the jacket. There's people say that and the shoulder pieces on the jacket point to it being a replacement for a military jacket for people to train in. My thinking is it's just it's just to differentiate it from Sambo and other combat systems around at the time.
Give it its own sort of style and sort of look.
Mm.
They have the red and the blue, don't they? They don't grade in the same way, don't they? They use like a wrestling style grading system, don't they, for the competition? But they don't do the belt system, do they? You've just got the red and the blue for specifically differentiating who's who in the fight. Is am I right?
Well, the competition-wise, it's red and blue, and that's Olympic colours. You'll see in boxing it's red and blue, in freestyle wrestling it's red and blue. But you can actually get, like, the original Kirkas were white. And you can get black Kirkas. You can get them of any colour. It's just that in competition, you will generally only be allowed to wear red and blue. Yeah.
So where it was going with that one before then, so what was the, you know, when you first started training the Sambo, how did you, because you see them, the people who cross over into the mixed martial arts, and I know you're mainly orientated towards Sambo itself rather than the martial arts to some degree in terms of your interest in viewing it, not necessarily in practicing, but in viewing it. They seem to dominate, or at least there's a couple of figureheads that dominate. What was it like going in from doing the Thai, the Jiu-Jitsu, doing the, you know, the sort of predominantly big ones that you see in the UK, and then trying out the Sambo, and you're going through, like, you know, you've got that sense of stand up, and then they might be throwing you into a hip toss or whatnot. What was it like, the struggle, or was it something that you fitted into straight away? Was it easy? What?
Well, as I say, originally I was traditional jiu-jitsu, so I was already conversant with a lot of the techniques, the throws, etc., that are used in Sambo and ultimately judo. So taking up Thai boxing with Colin Heron at Cowbourne, that was a eye-opener.
Yeah.
The move into the grappling from then, that was an interesting move, but not a too shocking move. When I first started in Sambo from there, it was quite a bit of a shock, because the Sambo mentality is very, very brutal.
Yeah.
There's very much the thinking that if it works, use it, end of story, which arguably all martial arts use or should use. But due to the origins of Sambo, it's very much something that is pushed. It doesn't matter where it comes from, doesn't matter which system it comes from. If it works, take it, adapt it, use it, end of story.
Yeah.
So it was a shock, a painful shock in many ways, but a shock, but a very good shock to go through, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, it's one of them. If you go to something like that, and everybody I've had on so far, they've specialised in something, and then they've gone and trained, and then it's that shock of thinking that you're somewhere here, and then just getting brought back down a peg or two. You know, you thought you're on the third or fourth rung of the ladder, and now you're back on the bottom one, and you've got to go through the same process again. And it's like, I don't know if it's refreshing because you're like, now I've got a new challenge, or if it's brings you back down to earth and you're like, you know, how many times is this going to happen?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it is very much I'm someone who loves learning no matter what it is.
Yeah.
And for me, it very much was as I say, a shock, but it was a shock that was a revelation, because a lot of things that I thought were very, very effective were suddenly shown out to be not quite as effective as I thought they were. And it had very little to do with the actual technique, and a lot to do with the mindset and the methodology of training. So yeah, very big shock, but one that had a very positive influence, to be perfectly honest.
That was something I wanted to ask you about, in terms of seeing these. I mean, Khabib, I mean, he's an animal. He tracks people down onto the cage. He's on top of them. The cardio seems to be at a point where no one can handle it. And you said to me before this, obviously you'd watched a lot of them just specifically because you were interested in the Sambo aspect. Do you think it's their method of training when you get out into Russia and the Caucasus and Dagestan and stuff, how they have a different mentality? Because you get these training systems, Krav Maga's one, isn't it, where you sort of self-defense without weapons, but that couldn't be any more different in my point of view from something like Sambo in terms of the very situational, taking guns off people and stuff like that. Sambo seems to be, like you said, a brutal sort of practice. And I can imagine going through the training and the sparring, you put through the mill a lot more in comparison to some of the martial arts that are practiced out in, say, the UK, for instance, where they're trying to get people through the door to pay.
Yeah.
I've been to some gyms where you've got kids running around with black belts on because it's 70 quid to do the to do the grading. And I'm thinking to myself, they've not learned anything other than it's easy to get a black belt when it shouldn't be. And I feel like the difference in the attitude out there is it's not about the money, because it's not necessarily their culture. It's about you put the work in and, you know, the attitude and, like you said, the brutality of it. Do you think that's right? Or
I think there's a couple of things that need to be taken into consideration there. You're right, but for me, I am someone who has to know the whys and wherefores of, like, just knowing something is not good enough. I need to know why. And my experience is that yes, it's absolutely the art of Sambo that makes it so brutal, but interwoven into that system, interwoven into Sambo, which, by the way, also the literal translation, it's the literal translation is self-defense without weapons.
Yeah.
So interwoven within Sambo is this phenomenally hard work ethic idea. And when you marry that with it coming from a culture, i.e. the Soviet Union, because there's no one home. If you were going to say there's one home, I would say it would be Russia, but you have influences drawn from so many different places. Freestyle wrestling, catch as catch can, believe it or not, judo, Georgian wrestling. So there's kind of like no one definitive, it started here in this region and that is it. But throughout the whole Soviet Union, at the time, the ethic was pretty much that, well, you had to graft damn hard for anything that you wanted and needed. And at the time, it was a case of survival. So what you wanted and needed was food. You had to graft hard to get it. So Sambo's come from a culture where all the way through history, from like the 1900s, you know, if you don't graft, you don't eat. So it's Sambo's took that on as part of the Sambo culture.
Yeah.
So it absolutely is the art of Sambo, but it is also the culture that it comes from. And Sambo is not separate from the culture. That's the thing. They're not separate from each other. So if you take a look at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, it's a similar scenario. They, like, Jiu-Jitsu from Brazil, there's a phenomenally hard work ethic, and there's a reason for that. And so the art of Sambo is brutal because where it came from is brutal, and the only way to survive in a brutal society is to be brutal. Yeah,
100% with you. I'm right in saying that you managed to get out to Russia.
Yeah.
I remember it on Facebook, and you were having trouble with visas and stuff. I mean, what was the process there, managing to get out to Russia? I mean, is it as hard as they say now, or?
Well, I didn't actually have that much trouble getting out to it was actually Kistovo, which is about 500 kilometers west of Moscow. I didn't actually have a great deal of trouble. I had to go to Manchester to sort the visa, but it was sorted. It's, you know, the actual flight out there, the journey out there, it's a bit of a trek.
Yeah, I can imagine that.
To fly into Moscow, then fly out. But you know, it was a wonderful experience. We flew to Moscow, then we flew. I met up with some people from other countries in Moscow, and then we flew out to Kistovo. We were met at the airport, and taken to the training center. And as an experience, it is a phenomenal experience. You will come across literally nothing like it.
Yeah.
You know, when you get out there, the whole time is dedicated to Sambo. That's it. Bang. You're stopping in a Sambo school. They affectionately call it the Sambo Hotel. So you're living, sleeping, eating Sambo. But like Sambo is your life for the time that you are there.
It reminds me. So, are you familiar with the Foxcatcher story?
Vaguely, yes. Yeah.
So they had the DuPont fella who was the crazy rich dude. It reminds me of, you know, when they have the American wrestlers, they effectively leave school and there's no money in the sport and it's not promoted. So this guy's idea before the tragedy was to bring them into his thing, to pay for all the facilities, and that was the way they were going to catch up with the Russians in the Olympic Games. And it reminds me of the way they talk about the Russians then, and David Schultz specifically says, I mean, he learned Russian to hear what they were saying on the sidelines, so he could hear what the corners are directing them. He said their outlook on the sport is you represent the country, and they put 100% into it. And where you're saying the Sambo Hotel there, it just reminds me of that, the view that if we're going to represent ourselves, we'll do it properly and we'll put 100% into it. And there's no room for error. There's no margin for it. It's just 100% all the time. And that's effectively what that DuPont, before he went off the rails, he was trying to replicate, you know, sort of a facility out in the States where they could do the same with the wrestling. I think obviously with the rise of mixed martial arts, it's helped them a lot, you know, because people see wrestling as a way into that sport, and, you know, it leaves them with some money there, doesn't it? But it's interesting that that's the facilities that you saw out there as well. Just confirms for me that, you know, they are high level in what they do.
Well, in the Sambo Hotel in Kistovo, Kistovo is a city in Russia and a region, and it is noted, like, if you are a Sambist from Kistovo, you have been brought up and you have trained for any significant time in Kistovo, your parterre, your mat work, your floor work will be second to none. They are the best Sambo floor work specialists in the world. There's no doubt about that. The actual facility itself was built during the Soviet era, and the best way to describe it is when you first see it, it looks like a KGB training center. It's not, and it never has been, but it has 3 very, very large training halls in it. And now when I say very large training halls, to put this in perspective, in one of them, there are 6 full-size freestyle wrestling mats in it, with some room at the edges, you know. And when I was there, that was the hall we were using, and it was full. It was hard to get on the mat and find any space because there was that many people on it. There was like 200 plus people, and these people had come from everywhere. There were people from Moscow. There were people from Kistovo itself. There were people from the far edges of Russia and the former Soviet Union. You know, they were Siberia. I trained like a few times, sparred with a guy, little guy, about 3/4 my height, and I'm quite short.
You're short and stocky. You're like a little square, aren't you? If anybody can't see him fully on the screen, he's like that half my size, and to move him, it's not easy.
Well, this guy, I tell you, he found it so massively easy to move me around, and watching with some of his other training partners, it was beautiful to see. But I think for me, one of the things that is misunderstood about the Russians, the Russian culture and the martial arts culture out there, is although Sambo itself is a brutal system, and the culture from the Soviet Union was a brutal culture, what people often do is they look at the Russians and they go, well, they never smile, they never do this, they never do that. The Russians are actually, in my experience, both here and over in Kistovo and Moscow, they are very, very friendly. It's just that from a training perspective, the more friendly they are with you, the more they are going to slam you around.
What, like banter? Or just...
They're helping you. It's a way of helping you. They're absolutely destroying you on the mat, but the way they see it is, well, if I destroy you now, it won't happen to you in competition.
Yeah.
And absolutely, they are willing. If you are training with one of them, and you, which I had to do several times, you stop and you go, they will absolutely give you that couple of seconds before they start again. And they are always, I picked up a lot of tips out there. And although I picked up a lot of stuff from the instructors, the students, the kind of mid-level students over there are extremely high-level students over here, like extremely high level. And so you can pick up a lot. I mean, I was put with the European champion, the under 25 European champion, every day for the first parterre roll and the first stand-up spar, and couldn't do anything with him, not a thing. But he was always willing to give something. He was always willing to tell you something, to help you, to advise you. Russian culture isn't this culture that people think it is, where everybody's stoic and we walk around like this and we're not friendly.
Yeah. You read his Arnold Schwarzenegger image that they used to put out in the 80s.
Yeah, it's just not like that. I was walking through the main drag through Kistovo, because it is a city, but the where the Sambo Hotel is kind of like one of the suburbs of it. So I was walking down the main drag of the suburb, and it's not an amazing place. It's not posh or anything. And this little Russian guy comes running up to me, and I'm thinking, what's going on here? And he stops in front of me, he points to me ears, and he goes, Sambo. And this great big grin appears on his face. Now, I don't speak any Russian, so he's trying to speak his best pidgin English. And for 45 minutes, we're sat on a bench with him telling me how he first encountered Sambo when he was in the Russian army, and then afterwards he took it up as a sport. It's a more friendly culture and country than people give it credit for.
I think it's shared experiences as well, isn't it? And it's one of them, as soon as they see someone from somewhere like England, where I don't see us as enemies, but it's portrayed in the media that we are some sort of, secret enemy with them. It must be nice for them to have the shared experience with you, because you've come all the way over there to come and, try something that's basically their culture, And I think that's nice. Like, and, how long ago was it you went to Russia now?
About 4 years.
4 years,
I think. So, I can't remember the exact year, to be honest. I'll have to look it up, but about 4 years.
You know what?
But yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, you're doing something which they view as theirs.
Yeah.
And they view it as, you've took the effort to come over, you've took the effort to try. I still speak to the head coach of the Russian team, Dmitry Troshkin. And I will message him over WhatsApp, asking him some little piece of advice that you wouldn't expect someone halfway across the world to answer. And then an hour or two later, you'll get a reply back. And he'll do it in English. So I make the effort to speak to him in Russian.
Yeah.
And yeah, absolutely, you're doing something which is theirs. I think what a lot of people forget, Neil, to be perfectly honest, is this idea that we're enemies.
Yeah.
This is a government thing. This isn't a people on the street thing.
I agree. I had a guy in university, and he was a Russian student who come over. One of the nicest kids I've ever met. He'd never bring anything up. He was just a lovely kid. And surprisingly enough, before he spoke, he looked American. He had skateboarder gear on and all that. Like, I thought when he was in the international students, I thought he was American. But no, lovely guy. Like, and I do view stuff like that. The stuff put out in the media is to serve some sort of purpose. That, you know, it's nothing to do with me. But
yeah, I mean, it's literally just that. It's what you've just said there. It's stuff that governments are involved in. We're not involved in that. Take them how you find them.
It's good though that you know. I mean, actually, sorry, I wanted to ask this first. How is your Russian now? Have you got? How is it? I want to hear Scouts Russian. Scouts Geordie Russian.
Well, to my shame, you're not going to hear any.
No, all right.
Literally 1 or 2 words. I have never found languages easy. So although I have a few words, it's nothing meaningful.
Yeah, mate, I've got the same problem. I'm living out in Gran Canaria now. That's where I live. And the Spanish, when they listen to my Scout Spanish, hey, tal.
Yeah.
They don't have a clue what I'm talking about. But
you're speaking Spanish, but they're going, what?
No, they don't even understand me English. Some of them speak better English than me.
Yeah.
But do you think there's anybody that's out there at the moment on the Sambo scene who are either going to hit peaks from the UK or maybe cross over and do something, you know, in another combat sport?
Who people from the UK or people from
Yeah,
Russia?
the UK sort of scene. You know, I know when you were doing it out of the gym, you were one of the few people I'd heard of doing Sambo specific training. I mean, what's the UK scene like really for you? I mean, because you're interested in it. Was it a struggle getting competition, or is it a wealth of it and I'm just unawares?
It's a little bit of both, to be perfectly honest. There's not as much competition as we would like, but there's probably more than people think. There's quite a few Sambo coaches in the UK that have exceedingly good pedigrees, and they're just unknown because it's not pushed in the same way as BJJ is or MMA is. So you've got the likes of well, you've got Brian Lister in Doncaster. Brian is a good friend of mine, and you know, his background is Thai boxing, judo, some wrestling, and he's a very good coach. His son Ewan. Now his son Ewan, he is an MMA fighter, but he is also a combat Sambo fighter. Now I think he's one of the ones to watch for the future.
Ewan Lister, is that?
Yeah, Ewan Lister.
Ewan Lister.
Fights out of Doncaster Combat Sambo or Doncaster Sambo. Now he gained a bronze in the President's Cup, which is no mean feat, believe me. And he's competing regularly, and that's like any combat sport. That's the main thing. So he's got very good coaches, and his dad and his MMA coach. So he's definitely someone to watch for the future. I think he'll be going further with Sambo, but I think his MMA career will progress quite well. And because he's fighting combat Sambo, the crossover is immediate and obvious. Then you've got I think it's Ryan Richardson from the Northeast. He trains under Barry Gibson. Barry's again a very good coach, and obviously he's from the Northeast.
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, Barry's a very good coach, and again Ryan has represented the UK as has Ewan in the Worlds. So like just to get to that competition and get past the first round, but it is a phenomenal feat. I mean, you'll go into competitions where there's no grade division. Yeah, so when you go to a Sambo competition, whether it's a local competition, a national competition, European, Worlds, there's no grade division, and that's the same for combat and sport. So you could be stepping on the mat and your first opponent is someone who's been training a year. Yeah, and they're just giving it their first go in that national competition. Or you could be stepping on the mat and facing Khabib.
Yeah.
And you don't know till the names are called. So you can go there and have the easiest fight in your life in that first round. Or you could go there and get smashed by the world champion straight away.
Yeah.
And this is part of that toughened mentality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
so just to get to the Worlds is a massive feat in itself. So I think those two, even if we're not talking fighters, if we're talking gyms, there's so many gyms in the UK that are little gems. But those two are the ones that they're very active in competition, or were before the pandemic hit. And I think they're places to watch out for.
I do.
People.
I feel like given the high level fighters, to start off with that as their base, and it like you say, it's got little bits of everything. Sambo, I feel like it's something that really there should be I mean, obviously you say there is a community there. I just feel like it'd be the first thing I'd say if I was a young man now. Obviously, when I was a young man, you had Arlovski and Fedor. But Khabib's just made it go exponential in terms of the meteoric sort of rise of him. And unfortunately, he's just retired, hasn't he? But I feel like it'd be one of the things to say, I want to add that to my game. Even though it is, certain elements of different things. I mean, that's all that mixed martial arts is. I want to go add that to my game. And I'm surprised that, I walk down the road in the UK, you can see Gracie gyms, Next Gen, Cabana. You see gyms here, there, and everywhere throughout, sort of Bootle right through town and to the other end of Liverpool. And I can't understand why you don't see, I mean, obviously you guys had Sambo, but you don't see more than the one.
I think with Sambo, the thing about Sambo is because it's never been a big money maker, it's never really been pushed. It's difficult to find what you want or what you need, but it is absolutely worth digging. I mean, when I say you have some coaches in the UK that have like amazing pedigrees, so just a couple of examples. You have Vadim Kalganov in Glasgow. Yeah. Now, Vadim Kalganov's background is very varied and mixed, but one of his coaches was Eugene Chumakov. Eugene Chumakov is a legend. Eugene Chumakov is one of the few people still alive that actually actioned Sambo in combat in the Second World War. Wow. So you have the likes of him who is passing on that kind of experience and training methodology. Eugene Chumakov had a very specific training methodology called Chumakov Spiral. But then you also have people like in Kent, down in the southeast, you have people like Oleg Sibilov. Now, my first experience of Oleg Sibilov was entering the Sambo Open in Kent, putting my Kirker on, getting on the mat and thinking, I'm wearing red, I'm going to win. I win when I wear red. Gripping up, just starting to set him up for a throw, and the next thing I know, I'm flat on my back.
Yeah.
It was It was a foot sweep. I only know it was a foot sweep because I was told it was a foot sweep and shown the footage afterwards. And I was very devastated. I was like, oh my God, I cannot believe I've been beaten so quickly. I've been beaten before, but never that quick. And so I went to my coach, it was Vadim Kalgonov, and I was like, oh, Vadim, that'll never happen again. I'm going to put that right. I'm going to put that right. It'll never happen again. And Vadim just burst out laughing. And I'm like, what kind of coach laughs when his student wins that quickly? Are you mental? And he said to me, Adam, don't worry. I know Oleg. And I'm like, yeah, but you know, that doesn't. And then I realized there was a little bit more going on here. And he went, Adam, Oleg was the national champion in Russia so many years in a row. And I was like, okay, I don't feel quite so bad now.
Yeah.
So you have little gems like that are tucked away in gyms that people just don't know of. And so if in this country, yes, you can absolutely go to the gym that's running a Sambo class like just down the road. But you have to be careful because there is some people out there who are teaching Sambo on the back of having done a little bit of judo, having done a little bit of freestyle wrestling, having done a little bit of BJJ, then just throwing it together and calling it a Sambo class. And
no,
one of the
it's
things
got to have that flow, though, hasn't it? I mean, it's got to have that flow of the actual art itself, though, doesn't it? It can't just be mishmashed.
Well, you're absolutely right, and you can normally tell when someone has done that. Now, don't get me wrong, Neil. I'm not denigrating people for years ago. I got a message of someone saying, "I want to be a Sambo coach. How do I become a Sambo coach?" And my reply was, "Well, how long have you been training?" Well, I haven't trained Sambo. Well, go and find a coach, train, and take it from there. And what actually happened is, I think it was 2 years later, this guy won the nationals. So hopefully that helped him. But you know, absolutely, I'm not denigrating people that like Sambo, that have read about it and love it. But look, go away, travel up to Scotland and train with Vadim. Travel down to Kent, train with Oleg. Travel to Congleton, train with Georgie Georgiev. Georgie Georgiev, phenomenal Sambo coach. You know, I've done a lot of work with Georgie. His students are second to none. And when you walk in the gym, he doesn't have a posh setup. He doesn't have a big gym that someone's pumped thousands into. He's got some oldish judo mats with a cover on, some weight stuff in the corner. You know, the smell of liniment, the white tape, the full lot. Never, ever loses the British Nationals. Georgie Georgiev has won the British Nationals at his age and in the adult male. So he's facing people 20 years his junior. He's never failed to win his weight category in both of those age categories. So you have to look, but they're there. And absolutely, you can tell when someone is a proper Sambist because it will show in their technique, it will show in their methodology, it will show in their mindset, it will show all over. And once you have one, learn everything you can, because here's the thing with Sambo as well. I've never had a serious Sambo coach, like a proper Sambo coach, say to me, if you train with me, it's just me. No, that doesn't happen. If you train with me, you train with me. But there's all these other people as well.
Yeah.
If you're not here with me on that day, why aren't you training with them? And that's always been the case, because the thing with Sambo is it's very individual. So although your coach, you will obviously take on techniques, etc., from whoever your coach is. Sambo's an individual thing. Even the techniques, like when you learn a Sambo technique, the coach isn't going to stand there and micromanage where your feet are, what angle your hips are at, all that kind of thing. No, because it doesn't work. When in Sambo, we're not trying to make you fit the technique. We're not saying, here's the technique, it must be done this way. The technique has to fit you. So we give you the technique and you drill the technique. And if the technique is not the way that I do it, not the exact way it doesn't matter. As long as it's working for you, that's all that matters. So when you go to these different coaches, you will pick up techniques. Like BJJ, you'll pick up techniques from different coaches that perhaps the way this coach does it for you works better than the way this coach does.
That's 100% true. That's 100% true. That I've got certain coaches that I've gone to for different martial arts, because I've never really trained Sambo. I'm just interested, to be honest with you. But I've had certain coaches that I'll go through a session and then I'll go home. I'll be like, that worked so well for me, I can't forget that. And I'll just be working, you know, little slips and stuff, underhook and different types of things. I'll do it in front of the mirror at home. And then I'll come back from another coach and I'll be like, right, I'll go off for a beer because I just feel like I just exercised. I'm being honest. I mean, it's hard to get that though. And I think a little bit of that is, you can walk in as like a heavyweight and train with someone who's predominantly, you know, a smaller, faster sort of, depending on whatever art you're doing, boxing, whatever. And, you know, some of them are trying to teach you these speedy little hand movements and stuff like that. And they're just not for you, and you're not going to pull them off in your weight class. And if you do, they're not going to be effective. Whereas someone else comes in and they say something that just clicks and you're like, that works so well. I'm catching him every time with it. And you're right. You should always have a wide sort of berth of people that you train with and train under, because you never know how good you can be until you've put yourself out there with other people, really, do you?
Well, no, that's it. It's like, look, it doesn't matter who the techniques come from, as long as they work. See, Sambo has like broad categories of techniques. Now, do the techniques have names? Well, yes, of course they do. But it's not like BJJ or Kung Fu, you know, like Jade Dragon springs over Chinese pagoda or compression chamber, stuff like that. They're very utilitarian names. It's a utilitarian culture. So it's like throw over the hip, throw over the head is what the names will translate to. But they tend not to have individual specific names for variations. So for instance, Melnitsa, which means windmill, is a shoulder throw. So a Melnitsa is a Melnitsa whether I'm standing, whether I've got one knee down, both knees down, whether I'm holding onto one arm, both arms, he's belting his arm, it's still Melnitsa. It's just a variation. And another thing with it, in Sambo, there's not an emphasis on collecting technique. It's actually looked on as a down. It's like, don't do this. You don't need to collect hundreds of techniques. Go along to the class and train. You will naturally pick up what will work for you. It will naturally happen. And if it doesn't work for you, don't spend time on it, because it's time you could spend using the stuff that is working for you. Now, I don't mean by this, never try, you know, give it one try and then forget it. No, that's not what I mean.
You've got to put it through its paces, but know when to call it a day on something, because, you know, it's like me with my size. I always found it really hard putting heel hooks on. Just the way my arm was and my shoulder frame, I've got shoulders that come right across. And I put too much weightlifting weights on. I could never get the heel hook. So in the end, I just sort of put that to one side. I know there's going to be a time when I'm going to need to use a heel hook, but, you know, the amount of other tools that I learned instead of just trying to nail that one thing day after day was just...
Yeah, you know, there's no need to do it. You know, pick up the techniques that work for you and, you know, concentrate on them. If you move into teaching at a later stage, then yeah, you're going to want to remember some more techniques. But like in Sambo, there's this philosophy that you only need 2 to 4 techniques. If you're working on the 2 techniques philosophy, and we're talking standing techniques here, not floor, you need 1 throw forward, 1 throw backward. If you're working on the 4 throw philosophy, which a lot of people do, 1 throw forward, 1 throw backward, 1 to the left, 1 to the right. That's all you need. If you're really good at them, that's all you're ever going to need, because you're going to be able to hit them from every angle, from all grips, the full lot. So the training methodology of Sambo is set up for that. And it actually, that training methodology can punish any attempt to just collect technique. It will absolutely punish it, because Sambo is utilitarian. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing to watch in a brutal kind of way, but it is utilitarian. It has a purpose. It has a function. Any aesthetic beauty comes second. The beauty is in the application.
Yeah, I mean, you do see that with, I mean, I wouldn't say Arlovski so much, but you watch Fedor and Nurmagomedov. They're not going for the beautiful aesthetics, you know. They just grind you down, and I mean, Fedor's got great knockout power as well, man. But I mean, Jesus Christ, did you ever watch the 2 Arlovski and Fedor fought? Didn't he? And he went in for the flying knee, and he just caught him. Fantastic, mate. But what do you think in terms of it progressing? Do you think it's going to become something that's going to grow, or do you think it's going to stay in that sort of community?
I think that there's a big push to get Sambo into the Olympics, and in all honesty,
is it too violent?
Sport Sambo or combat Sambo? Sport Sambo, absolutely not. Sport Sambo is absolutely not too violent. Combat Sambo, I would personally, for me, it's not. But I think if Sambo ever does go Olympic, it will help institute, or it will institute changes which will dumb Sambo down. For instance, in Sport Sambo at the minute, you are permitted the scissor throw, which is banned in judo, and it is not permitted in BJJ, but it is permitted in Sambo, and it's one of my favorite techniques. So if it goes Olympic, I think they will see that, we will see that removed. They're already talking about removing it in the run up to trying to get it Olympic. So you will lose little things like that. If combat Sambo were to go Olympic, I'm absolutely, definitely not sure. Like, I could handle Sport Sambo going Olympic. I could go, okay, there's going to be a couple of losses here. I'm willing to accept them for the good of you know, Sport Sambo as a whole, for the idea of pushing it further and getting more people involved in the sport. If combat Sambo were to go Olympic, I don't know. I think we may lose the groin shot and headbutt rule. In which case you're removing 2 things which give combat Sambo its particular flavor, and
yeah,
I don't think that's a good thing.
The Olympics is all about headgear, and they don't want to see real big knockouts or anything like that. They just want to see that point system for combat sports. I think it'd be good for the exposure for the sports. You know, people are then more likely to take it up. But again, like you say, one of the things about, I mean, do you find the brutality of it something that draws you to it, or do you feel that that's just a consequence of it? I mean, I was talking to Clark, who used to do the gym with, and I said to him, it's a hard thing to admit, but when you get someone in turtle and you're beating on them, it's a bit of a rush, but you don't want to sound like some sort of bully or something when you're saying it. Do you find the brutality is something that draws you to it? Or is it the technical?
It's both. I am like, look, Neil, I'm someone who I'm not going to make any bones about who I am and what I am. I'm absolutely attracted to the brutality of combat Sambo. My first Sambo competition was a combat Sambo competition. The first fight I had in that competition basically involved me and my opponent holding on to the shoulder of each other's kirka and uppercutting each other for about 3 minutes in total. And the ref kept pulling us apart and warning us, but we just laughed it off, gripped up, and just kept uppercutting each other. So I think that anyone in combat sports that says, look, I'm not attracted to the brutality and being able to hit someone and hurt someone legally, anyone that says they're not attracted to that, that's doing combat sports, is a liar. Or they're deluded. Okay. The difference is that I want to do it in a controlled environment where I'm not actually going to be hurting anyone.
No physical long-term damage to them.
I don't want to like cause any damage to anyone, but you're right, it's a rush, of course it is. And that's one of the reasons we do it, if not the main reason. So for me, what attracted me to combat Sambo was definitely the brutality, because as I say, I originally trained traditional jiu-jitsu. And for many years, I felt like there was something missing. There's something missing here. What is it that's missing? And it turned out that it was the training methodology. And a lot of the stuff that I learned in traditional jiu-jitsu is in Sambo, combat and sport. They often actually call Sambo Russian jiu-jitsu. And it was the training methodology and this ability to like self-select techniques by, am I going to get my head punched in if I, now that said, it's like a combat Sambo class isn't just two people wailing on each other. There's a lot of technique, there's a lot of, proper drilling. But yes, the brutality is an attraction. And the thing with the Olympics is you mentioned the point system. Now, sport and combat Sambo both have an intricate point system, which I don't think should be lost. It's an intricate point system. It works well. But my experience of sports that turn Sambo is that they turn Olympics, is that they always lose something. Like judo at one stage lost leg attacks. Worst thing judo could have done. Worst thing they could have done. And so I just feel that if Sambo goes Olympic, whether it's the sport element or the combat, you're going to lose something. If you lose something from the combat element, you're going to lose the groin shot rule for definite. And you're probably going to lose the headbutt rule. Now, these are two things which combat Sambo should never lose. Now, let's put this in perspective. I talk about the groin shot rule because technically speaking, groin shots in combat Sambo are legal. Okay, but you're going to see very few fighters actually trying to kick or deliberately knee their opponent in the groin. Number one, it's not as easy to do as people think it is. And number two, when your opponent knows you can do it, it makes it even less easy.
Is it more
you will see?
Is the groin shot more just sort of to stop the 5-minute breakup? Is it more just to keep it flowing, the actual fight itself, or is it something that they say, if you can get it, get it?
No, absolutely. If you can get it, take it.
Yeah.
It's just that what you train for is what you get. So if you don't train that groin strike, the chances of getting it are lower, and there are higher percentage techniques. That's the thing. People think like in a system that allows groin shot, they're just going to stand there and be trying to kick each other in the groin for 6 minutes. No, that would be pointless because groin shots are not that easy to get. They're easier to get in the clinch. So when two sambists clinch up, and they're holding on to each other's kirka, that's when you're likely to get that groin shot. And it usually happens accidentally. Now, if you receive a groin shot, let's be fair, you're going to need a standing count.
Yeah.
So that groin shot rule is there as a utilitarian rule of, yes, you can strike the groin because it's a legitimate target, but we're not gonna be silly about this and say, once you've been struck in the groin, you need to carry on fighting. No, it's not going to happen.
No, but yeah, I just feel like the Olympics themselves, they take a lot of sports and they dilute them in the combat sector. You look at the basketball, they'll have the dream team for the basketball and allow professionals to play basketball so they can have your Michael Jordans and that in it. But then it comes to a combat sport and it's not too pretty to have someone get knocked out, so they dilute that down. And I feel like that they're a little bit deluded old white men in their rich buildings who just decide what they think's best for the world. I just, don't get me wrong, I don't want to get hit by the Olympic Committee, but that's how I feel about it. I just don't think for the combat sports is, I know it is at amateur level, but.
Well, I agree with you 100%. I mean, what you have to remember is, from a Sambo perspective, Sambo is an amateur sport. So you don't have any official professional Sambists. Do you know what I mean? Although they do exist, they're fighting in other things as well. So the problem with the Olympics is money. There's that much funding revolving around the Olympics, which is why everyone wants their sport to be Olympic. And once you've got that funding, you can push your sport or your system more and more. And I understand that, and I get that. I just, like yourself, I see too many systems and sports that have had changes made to them that have changed the character of the sport. Like judo is the exact, judo's the perfect case in point. There's been that many changes to judo over the rules, that many changes to the rules in judo over the years.
Yeah.
But absolutely, the Olympics have caused a massive shift, and it's not a positive one, not from my perspective. So would I like to see Sambo Olympic? Half of me is like, oh God, yes, absolutely. I want to show people what this is. I want to show them what the potential is. The other half of me goes, ooh. Yeah, in that drive to show people what it is, are we going to lose what it is? And that's the problem I have.
I think as well, in terms of where you want to show people what it is, you've got two systems really. You get competition where people go and watch in the day, and they may have it in the evening or whatever. You look at mixed martial arts and boxing and Thai boxing, they have this sort of, you'll go to, it doesn't matter whether it's an arena. I mean, I've been to the local YMCA where they've set it up and they've just had a Tressler table full of Carling cans, but it gets so much more sort of exposure because people can go and have a drink and a social between fights and between rounds, and people will do their Friday, Saturday night there watching that. Whereas Sambo seems to be direct sort of martial arts. And it's one of them. Would you never see it crossing over into that sort of scene? I don't know.
There are places where there are kind of one-on-one Sambo competitions and fights. I mean, if you take a look at the President's Cup, what the President's Cup is, the President's Cup is like the 5 nations of Sambo. So you have 2 groups of countries. They all have, it's a team and an individual thing, but it's mainly a team competition. So you have 2 different groups. They will fight off amongst each other, and then the winners of them 2 groups will fight off against each other as well. And so that's probably the closest you get officially to what you're describing. There are, I believe, kind of like one-on-one where fighters are matched competitions, but they're not really Sambo competitions. They're fights between two Sambists, and they may or may not be wearing a kirka. As for would I like to see that, I don't think there's any harm in it as long as it is properly controlled.
The reason I say you look at one fighting championships now, they'll have your billing headliners, you know, mixed martial arts, MMA, but then they'll have a couple of Thai fights and a couple of K1 fights on the undercard, and they may even, you know, one day put that up as top bill. And it'd be interesting to see, you know, I mean, the problem you've got is that's a cage sort of surrounding there, but whether you could ever include it in something like that, because I think if you're doing a mixed martial arts promotion, why not do some fights just set to specific martial arts? As long as you can do them in that cage setting, then why wouldn't you? And it's nice to see that they do the Thai and stuff like that for some of the more K1 rules on the same show as what they do the mixed martial arts. And for me, I think that's a good way to get more exposure for more of the martial arts specific. Because it's going the way where you see just gyms purely mixed martial art, and they will have classes devoted to each martial art. So you don't have your where you used to go to your local karate club or your local Thai club. You don't see as much of that anymore because you have these gyms that just basically, they'll take a coach from here, a coach from there, a coach from there, and they'll have it all under one roof. And before you know it, you're rolling on the mats when you just wanted to kick someone.
I think one of the things with MMA, so to speak, is that MMA is becoming, or has become to a great degree, a specific set of martial arts. So, for example, Thai boxing, wrestling, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. That's how most people view MMA. Certainly most people that I speak to view MMA. And a lot of people don't consider that. Does it have to be Thai boxing? No, there's been several successful karateka in MMA.
Thompson,
Does it have to be wrestling? No, there's been some successful judoka. Does it have to be BJJ? Well, BJJ is just the predominant floor work specialists at the minute. But, you know, it's this view of MMA as MMA is these three things. And I think this is where the rot sets in, because when you're viewing something like MMA, for me, MMA is a rule set. It's not a system. It's a rule set. So when you're saying MMA, well, if you're not doing Thai boxing, it's not MMA. If you're not doing BJJ, it's not MMA. If you're not doing wrestling, no, that's a flawed premise. If it's mixed martial arts, you should be able to do
whatever,
just judo and try it. I mean, you're not going to get very far.
Well, Ronda Rousey's the perfect example of that, isn't it? She started striking, and well, to be fair, she struck out Betty Carrera, but she tried to go up with a top level kickboxer and ended up ruining her career.
The Holly Holmes
incident. The Holly Holmes incident. Yeah.
I mean, the thing with Ronda Rousey is her judo was
exceptional.
Very good, or is very, very good. And the thing with it is that if you take a look at what she did, it was throw and then armbar, and she was exceptionally good at it, but it was only going to last so long. She was always going to come up again. It's like Khabib for me. Before Khabib retired, I was praying Khabib would never lose, because I love the guy. His work ethic is phenomenal. He's just such a humble guy. You know, everything about him, amazing. But I was thinking to myself, if he loses, I'll be devastated. But it's only a matter of time. No one can go on winning forever. And somebody's going to find the weakness in his game. He's going to come across someone who is maybe just lucky that day. Yeah. So with Ronda Rousey, she pushed it as far as she could go. Someone plugged her weakness. You know, it was like, right, okay, got you, bam, one kick, done. And for me, I always thought to myself, if Khabib loses, it's going to be to an exceptional striker. It's never going to be to a wrestler. I couldn't have seen it being to a BJJ specialist. To me, it was going to be a striker. And that's because the weakest part of Khabib's game was his striking. But if you look at the way he improved everything about his game, you know, like especially his striking, improved exponentially.
His striking for me, it did improve. It did improve. But I noticed where he clocked Conor McGregor. McGregor's hands were low just because he was looking to sprawl. He was just looking to stop that ground game. And where you say an exceptional striker could have beat him, he had an opportunity. I'm not saying he's better in any way, but he went in planning for Khabib's game, not bringing his game, in my eyes. And that was his biggest mistake, because he just didn't want that pressure. I mean, he did a few scrambles at the beginning, but he was never going to do that for the rest of the fight. Yeah. He should have just brought his game and, you know, just try to catch him before he gets down or grabs one of his limbs, because it was the only way he was winning.
Yeah, I mean, for me, Conor was never going to win that fight. And the reason I say that is Conor's ego. Now, there's some people that go, you know, he speaks the way he speaks because he's just trying to draw. Yeah, okay, I get that. But his ego is he has a phenomenal ego. And Khabib went into that fight knowing where the danger was. But as you've just said there, knowing that to win, he had to out-wrestle Conor. And he was always going to be able to do that. He was always going to be able to do that. But he was conscious enough of Conor's striking that, yeah, absolutely, I need to be wary of his striking, but I'm still going to out-wrestle the guy. You know, Khabib, as humble a guy as he is also supremely confident. And so he had, or has, supreme confidence in what he does, but he's not stupid. And more importantly, his father was not stupid. His father was a very clever man and very experienced man. You know, his father was a Soviet level wrestling coach, judo coach, sambo coach. His father was a very, very clever man. The genius behind Conor was Conor's father. And Conor's father instilled in him this work ethic and this, do as I tell you, have confidence in me. And obviously, Conor took that on. You know, Conor took that on board. And so Conor's confidence in, Khabib's confidence in what Khabib could do was supreme. But he wasn't cocky with it. He wasn't cocky. He wasn't going to take any risks for the sake of being flashy.
Yeah, it's a very Western sort of thing, isn't it? The cockiness and the money and stuff. I felt like it was something I bought into right up until the Aldo fight and that, even a bit of the Nate Diaz fight. But what I didn't like was then that complete change back to the humility. I think if you got to just accept the nature of your beast. If that's you, stick with it. I think it was changed around then maybe for a bit of, I don't know, maybe it was a humility earned after the Khabib fight, I don't know. But yeah, I enjoyed the original show that you put on. But
yeah.
Well,
look, I'm not saying Conor is a bad fighter here.
No, he's excellent. But
again, anyone that says that is not looking at the picture record properly and isn't looking at the statistics. But I think for that particular fight, as you say, you know, Conor went in there conscious of Khabib's wrestling, and I feel scared of Khabib's wrestling.
Yeah, 100%. You could see it.
He knew exactly what Khabib could do. So although Conor's striking is unorthodox and he is a good striker, he was very, very conscious of Khabib's wrestling, and that to a degree took over in his brain.
Well, yeah, the difference is Khabib went out to wrestle him and do his game. Conor went out to defend Khabib's wrestling. Khabib managed to land that big dig because Conor's hands were down here, expecting him to shoot, so he wanted to push down and sprawl, and he needed to go in and force his fight on Khabib. And I think there were elements there where he looked like he was starting to do it, but he just never got it off.
I think there was nothing about that fight that ever kind of had me in any doubt as to who was going to win. Did Conor last longer than I thought he would? Absolutely. That said, you know, it's Khabib's wrestling. Look, Khabib's wrestling is not the best. Khabib is not the best wrestler in the world, but then Khabib's not a wrestler. Khabib is an MMA fighter who specializes in wrestling. And so his ability to use that technique under the pressure of strikes, under the pressure of even high-level wrestlers attacking him is phenomenal. And so, no, nothing about that fight said to me that Conor was ever going to win, but I was surprised that Khabib didn't finish it earlier. And that's a testament to Conor.
Yeah, 100%. I know, obviously, for you specialise in Sambo. You only really watch the UFC mixed martial arts if there's someone of interest to you. And like you say, you know, Khabib's one of them guys. I just want to mention last night, Paddy Pimblett took a rear naked choke on Cage Warriors. He's looking like he's moving on. Because we're coming up to around about an hour 20 now, so we're going to have to start wrapping up if I want to get this uploaded every time this week. Well, look, Adam, I mean, I could have talked for another 2 days because everything you said there, mate, spot on, interesting. And you know what? I think maybe if you're ever interested again in a couple of months' time or something, if you want to come back on, because I feel like there's a lot more that we could have talked about there, but we've only got said time to get it up on the platform. So thanks for coming on, mate. I appreciate it, and it was good talking to you again on a personal level, mate. I'd like to anybody who's watching, make sure you like, subscribe, and I'll have this up as soon as possible for you, and I'll break it down into separate parts so you can just look at different sections. And yeah, have a good day, guys. Enjoy.